My earliest memories of soccer are of pickup games on our street, weaving through small brick houses and potholed dirt roads, scoring goals and laughing like crazy between gasps of cold, heavy air. We would play for hours, until our feet hurt, and the sun went down and our mothers called us back inside. No fancy gear, no expensive jerseys, just a ball, or something like it. Therein lies much of the beauty of the game. As for what I did with that ball, well, I learned almost everything I know from my father, João Ramos do Nascimento. Like virtually everyone in Brazil, he was known by his nickname, Dondino. Dondino was from a small town in the state of Minas Gerais, literally, General Mines, where much of Brazil's gold was found during colonial times. When Dondino met my mother, Celeste, he was still performing his mandatory military service. She was in school at the time. They married when she was just 15. By 16, she was pregnant with me. They gave me the name Edson after Thomas Edison because when I was born in 1940, the electric light bulb had only recently come to their town. They were so impressed that they wanted to pay homage to its inventor. It turned out they missed a letter, but I've always loved the name anyway. Dondino took his soldiering seriously, but soccer was his true passion. He was 6 feet tall, huge for Brazil, especially in those days, and very skilled with the ball. He had a particular talent for jumping high into the air and scoring goals with his head, something he once did an amazing 5 times in one game. That probably was, and is, a national record. Years later, people would say, with some exaggeration, the only goal-scoring record in Brazil that doesn't belong to Pelé is held by his own father. It was no coincidence. I'm certain that Dondino could have been one of the all-time Brazilian greats. He just never got a chance to prove it. When I was born, my dad was playing semi-professional ball in a town in Minas Gerais called Três Corações, 3 Hearts in English. Truth be told, it wasn't much of a living. While a few elite soccer clubs paid decent salaries back then, the vast majority didn't. So being a soccer player carried a certain stigma. It was like being a dancer, or an artist, or any profession that people pursue out of love, not because there's any real money in it. Our young family drifted from town to town, always in search of the next paycheck. At one point, we spent a whole year living in a hotel, but not quite the luxury kind, let's say. It was, as we later joked, a 0-star resort for soccer players, as well as traveling salesmen and outright bums. Right before my 2nd birthday in 1942, it looked like all that sacrifice would finally pay off. Dondino got what appeared to be his big break. He was called up to play for Atlético Mineiro, the biggest and richest club in all of Minas Gerais. This was finally a soccer job that could support all of our family, maybe comfortably. My dad was just 25. He had his whole playing career in front of him. But during his very first match against São Cristóvão, a team from Rio, disaster struck when Dondino collided at full speed with an opposing defender named Augusto. That was not the last we heard of Augusto, who would recover and go on to other things. But it was sadly the high point of Dondino's playing career. He catastrophically damaged his knee, the ligaments, perhaps the meniscus. I say perhaps because there were no MRIs back then, no real sports medicine to speak of at all in Brazil, in fact. We didn't really know what was wrong, much less how to treat it. All we knew was to put ice on whatever hurt, elevate it, and hope for the best. Needless to say, Dondino's knee would never fully heal. Unable to make it on the field for his 2nd game, Dondino was quickly cut from the team and sent back home to Três Corações. Thus began the true journeyman years, a period that would see our family constantly struggling to make ends meet. Even in the best of times, things had been tough, but now Dondino was around the house a lot, trying to stay off his knee, hoping it would somehow mend and he could go back to Atlético, or someplace similarly lucrative. I do understand why he did this. He thought it was the best path to making a good living for his family. But when he wasn't well enough to play, there was hardly any money coming in, and of course there was no social safety net whatsoever.